I should be streaming. Hello. Hey, do you want to get the door? Yeah. Okay. Hello. I am. Phones. Make sure everything's alright. Yeah, I'm just waking up looking hella professional. Alright. 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 Let's see. Where is. Um. Okay. I need a call. Okay. Didn't answer. Alright. Alright, here we go. Hello. Hello?
Hey, this is Barn.
Hello, Barn. How you doing? Can you hear me? Can you hear me well?
I can. You're good.
Okay, awesome. I'm just gonna make sure you're coming across on stream well. Hello.
Okay.
Hello? Sorry, just
Hey, this is Barn.
okay. Hello, Barn. Alright, you come across alright. Let's see. Okay, so you I believe you said on Twitter that you are a disillusioned GOP voter, and could you like just give like a quick little like rap sheet on how involved you were in the GOP and just to give you an idea of how deep you were in and how like kind of I found it strange to be that deep in and then be this disillusioned. So I was just curious about that.
Oh, I'm nobody special, just a normal Republican. So I
I
don't think I've
thought
done anything remarkable.
was that
The
what did I
I'm just
get
a
you
normal Republican.
did I get you mixed up with someone else that said that they ran with they like have been involved since the first Bush? Was that somebody else that I got? Did I get you mixed up with someone else?
Probably. I mean, Yeah, I'm just like a regular guy. So,
Okay. So you were a DeSantis
yep,
voter, and then now you planning on not voting for Trump, or are you just kind of like are you just kind of biting the bullet while you vote for Trump?
definitely not voting for Trump.
Okay. Can I ask what makes you not want to vote for Trump?
Well, I voted for him twice, obviously, 16 and 20, and
Okay.
he just didn't do what he said he was going to do. He campaigned on things and he just didn't do it. I mean, I don't see the reason to support somebody
Yeah,
who can't accomplish what they say. So
for sure.
it's
What
not
did
really complicated.
Okay, yeah. So yours is just, being dissatisfied with his competence. That's what is disillusioning you?
Oh yes, definitely.
Okay, cool. What were the main things that you wanted him to do that he didn't do?
I think besides just his general demeanor and I mean chaos can be a good strategy, but it didn't really seem to produce the results. Was it 2018 February when they had the first budget reconciliation
Mhm.
bill and he toyed with the idea of vetoing it and never did? Um,
Okay.
but not just never did, but he said the reason was because SecDef Mattis told him that he should sign it and he would look good supporting the military. So
Mhm.
it really bothered me that he seemed so weak that he could be obviously browbeat um, by the leadership, and it was a horrible deal. And I mean, that's 2018, so he had a whole year to be in there, and he had failed. What he rejected two or three border deals where he would get more money for the wall, and every single deal they offered him less, and he finally took it. So it was that point, I'd seen him for a year, and then of course, obviously, fast forward to 2020 with the tariffs
Mhm.
against China and the shutdown for COVID, which seemed excessive. He just didn't seem to be a guy who knew what he was doing, and he sort of flailed a lot. And then when
So
he lost, I mean, he lost. So you ran twice. I voted for you twice. That's pretty much the limit if you can't do it. It
okay.
might be different if he had come up with a plan. Like he said, okay, here's what happened, and here's how I'm going to respond to it. But he still hasn't done that. I mean, he doesn't he doesn't seem to have any clear interest in conservatives voting for him. He's never once said he wants conservatives to vote for him now, and he hasn't
Yeah.
said at all how he's going to be Biden. So I mean, that's kind of incompetent to me.
Do you think that he might be like in terms of border stuff, and I think that on hold on, I'm about to sneeze. Do you think that after there's a lot of conservative issues that I think that some people in the Republican Party are not interested in solving and are rather interested in using as like a perpetual
Yeah, yeah,
motivator.
and they've been so blunt about it. I mean, maybe Mitt Romney is lying, right? But nobody, including the Trump campaign, says he's lying. So he
Mhm.
literally says, "Please don't solve this. Please don't make it a deal so that I can run on it." I mean, that's just blatant. He's a politician, and
Mhm.
they're all politicians. He's just not very good at it. It's
Yeah, okay. So I think that
so my issue. There's like two or three things where you think, I think he did a pretty good job. The problem is, I don't think the tactic he used to get there will work. Like definitely the stay in Mexico policy,
Mhm.
huge. And all the Republicans say, well, why doesn't Biden just turn that back on? But what they forget is that was negotiated with Mexico.
Yeah,
I don't think Trump, if he won, which I don't think he can win, but if he won, I don't think he would have the leverage
to
with
negotiate with Mexico.
our neighbors anymore. I don't think he'd have leverage with Germany anymore, with Mexico anymore, with I don't know what Japan's view and India's view of him, but they were all very open and welcoming. He had this weird approach to things, which is like in economics, it's the chicken game theory, where
Mhm.
like in Footloose, where Kevin Bacon is driving, head on. You've got to convince the other guy you're so freaking crazy that you won't turn, and that's the only way they'll swerve. or you've got to swerve at the last minute. I
Yeah, I
don't think
mean,
people are going to buy it because now I think they know he swerves. They know he rolls.
for sure. I mean, I would say that you would know he swerves earlier than that, considering how he kind of like swerved with North Korea and stuff like that. Um, I feel like he swerves for different types of people, and it's based purely on an interpersonal thing and has nothing to do with like the broader geopolitics. Like he will swerve with Putin and Kim Jong Un, but he won't swerve with Germany, even because he thinks Germany is weaker just because they're led by a woman. Like it's purely an interpersonal thing. Would you agree with that?
What do you think? What do you think's motivating that? I mean, you're basically saying that he, in general, attacks our friends and sucks up to our enemies. And
There's
I
two
guess I've seen
things.
that domestically because he does that with his part. I've never seen a Republican attack other Republicans
The
as
way he
much
does.
as he does. It's
I think it's like using Occam's razor, just blind, dumb narcissism and
yeah,
sexism, and just like
yeah,
worshiping fascism, just worshiping strength. Like, just I think that that's the easiest explanation. Is there maybe
yeah,
somebody pushing the scale that's being paid by somebody? Maybe, but like I don't think that explains it more than the other.
yeah. I mean, personally, he just seems like a petty person, right?
Yeah,
I don't see that. I love things about every nation in the world. There's something admirable, but the nations you pick that he seems to um, coddle,
yeah.
they don't seem very strong. They seem weak
No,
and vulnerable.
they're
There's a great book called Fragile. I
yeah,
think I can't remember the author, and it's this idea that I don't want to call names, but it's this idea that bullies are actually very breakable. That people that seem strong and they
mhm,
come off really tough are really very fragile inside. They don't have that inner core strength where they can take things
yeah.
and roll with them. That the smallest thing just cracks them. This this Taylor Swift thing is hilarious. I mean, it's a perfect example because he seriously wants to be himself. Like you said, he tends to come after people, uh, you know, for a certain reason.
Yeah,
And
I think
Taylor's a
it's
woman,
very strange for an 80-something-year-old man to be jealous of the popularity of a 34-year-old pop star.
and
Um,
yet he won't. He will not unleash out loud. They said, okay, behind the scenes he said this, but he's terrified. He's clearly scared of his own shadow. So I don't know. It's
what
I mean, do you think you sort of watch it from a big perspective? Do you think he can win? Do you think he can
um,
like
I'm never going to underestimate the effectiveness of stupid people in large groups.
it's like the law of large numbers
Yeah.
applies to bad decisions as well?
So are you gonna be voting for Biden then?
I've never voted. I didn't even vote for Obama. I was an election judge in on the South Side in President Obama's um, neighborhood. So the first election '08 where he won,
Mhm,
I had the privilege to drive I was a Republican judge, of course, but I drove the ballots up to the central collection office, and I'm
mhm,
familiar with his neighborhood and things, and I'm driving past. Go right by his house to get there, but by that time, the election had been called. The Secret Service had cordoned off the area, and expanded the perimeter. Um, Even then, being that close to Obama,
mhm.
those for state senate, U.S. Senate, president, I'd never felt the pull to vote for a Democrat.
Do you feel that
I
pull
just don't
now?
think Biden's doing a horrible job. That's what
Okay.
that's what baffled me. It's like on the Republican side, it's this Nikki Haley phenomenon, and on
Mhm.
the Democrat side, it's Biden. It's like people want to say their opponent is a horrible, horrible person, and I'm not seeing the facts behind the adjective.
Okay.
He's clearly old,
Yeah.
like he's clearly old, and he's clearly not mentally and physically
Yeah,
capable of a lot of
I
things.
totally agree with that, but I just feel, like, weird when people say that compared to Trump as if he is not also gaffing and, like, mentally declining at the same time. I think
He is, and of course it's less,
it's a
but
very
it's
I'm just saying
yeah,
this about Trump fans, like, it feels like a very selective um, selective criticism that could easily go just as hard as on Trump, but they'll just ignore it.
I tell you what's so heartbreaking is I know some really good people.
Hmm.
Um, people that base their lives um, on a Christian faith or a dedication to others.
Yeah.
And I just watch what they say in defense of this person. And part of it's ignorance. Like they have to almost knowingly ignore what he says now. They never talk about what he actually says. So it's like they're playing a tape in their mind
Hmm.
that really doesn't have anything to do with the reality of the guy. But if they use the standard that they judge, like you said, others like Biden, with him, it's clear. Like you would reject this person.
Uh,
So it hurts. It hurts actually to see it. So I don't know. I don't have anything against Biden.
hmm
Uh, but I admire many things about him. I don't agree with his past policies, but I think he has a. When I was young, I heard Biden speak. I graduated from Delaware and where he's from, and the thing that struck me most. I don't know if you remember Jesse Helms from North Carolina, super
uh-huh.
conservative, ultra.
Yeah.
Okay, so he would tell these stories, right? And maybe bullshit. I don't know, but he said I would visit Jesse Helms, and he wasn't describing just himself, but senators in general would do this in the hospital. We were friends. We talked about things. And he said the thing about politics is you can definitely question positions people take and you can attack them, but you should never question their motives. You should assume they're doing it from a that's their thing. That's what they believe for whatever reason. But you don't say they're evil people. Um, so he kind of comes with that attitude. And for an old senile guy who I don't agree with his policies, he seems to be making some really really good calls on the field. Like he seems to be knowing what to say, when to say it, even with diminished capacity. He makes seems to make decisions where he puts the chess pieces in the right places. And I think that just comes from like 40 years of practice in the business. And it's the difference you said about you sort of characterized my view accurately about effectiveness, competence. Biden is just a professional politician, and Trump is just an amateur politician. Trump is a guy where politicians came to and said, "We need money," and therefore Trump thought he knew something about politics. But it's
Hmm.
like it's a really complicated business. I can't
It
imagine being a
See,
politician.
I don't. I've always like. I'm a literally a socialist. So like everybody I would want is an outsider. So I don't really.
Like who? Like who
Um.
would be a big name for you?
I mean Bernie Sanders, obviously. Um, but the only reason I would want him over people more to the left of him is because he's not an outsider. Because in order to get things done in the system as it is, you do need to know people, and you do need to be able to pull levers. And Bernie Sanders, having been in there since what, the '80s, knows where those levers are and can at least teach the next generation of democratic socialists where those levers are and be able to do things while the other socialists do things on the outside.
Well, I think AOC, that whole kind of young generation of progressives, right?
Hmm.
In my opinion, they were sort of put in check by Pelosi. She
Oh yeah,
basically,
absolutely.
mommed them. But you can say what you want about her. I think she's actually learning the game.
Oh yeah.
When
I
she first came, the first couple of years, she lost her. I can't remember the guy's name who was really the brains behind it. And you would hear her make these comments like, "I have to fucking work. These committees are hard. I have to read shit."
Yeah,
It's like, yeah, but I think she's doing it. I think she's actually doing the job behind the scenes and has potential.
for sure. I She definitely is like getting things. Would you be like in favor of like moving closer to like more of like a social democratic like Nordic style system than what we currently have? Like it just kind of
Well,
what
I
caused like these
where
evolutions
where
and
I where I work is in a lot of orbits with NATO countries and stuff, and I think maybe there's a lot of different people, but I think in general the Nordic countries would object to that characterization. Like we kind of make that, oh, it's Nordic socialism. They see themselves as strong capitalists, and there's an argument to be made for that. So I
I mean,
don't
I
think
also
they
see
are
that.
really what we think.
I'm not like a like when I say like I'm a socialist, I don't mean like I wanted to vote for Bernie Sanders. I mean like I believe in the abolition um of the bourgeoisie. Um
So I'm a small what I'm about to say, but I
Mhm.
teach economics at little colleges, kind of
Yeah.
thing. I love capitalism, and so it's almost like I don't know what you would call like a gospel, like the religious message. I really believe
You're
in the
evangelical
power
about it.
of free markets. Yeah,
Okay. Can I ask, like,
yeah.
okay, so, like, what about, like, the cooperative model and in terms of, like, employees having a say in their workplace in terms of, like, a legitimate vote that is, like, legally binding? What is going to make that business worse under that model as opposed to just one person making all the decisions, or maybe a small board of people making the decisions that don't even really work there?
Well, I'm a Packers fan, man. So what we got like how many thousands do we have that own the Packers? Um, I don't know. Do they really know anything about running a business
I mean,
just
there's
because they worked at it?
let's be real, there's a lot of business owners that don't know how to run a business. There are a lot of businesses that are successful in spite of who runs it, not because of who runs it. But
That's
there's
true.
um But I think that having, like, I'm just think like, I feel like governments have gotten better since we like abandoned the like monarchic model, right? Like where it's where when people
Of course. Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
like, I feel like if there is something about people being able like, I think what most of it is a cognitive issue. I don't think one person on top of, like, a 1,000-person company can truly even have the brain power to understand all the things that are going wrong, even if you have, like, the best management and, like, the best
Well,
HR
you're kind of making the capitalist argument there, though. You're
by
talking about within the context of a larger freer market where multiple people
oh, I'm
can.
I'm okay with markets. I just don't want capitalists. Does that make sense?
Not really, because they seem to be the definition of capitalism is allowing the market to set the value
No,
of things.
no, a capitalist is just somebody like you under you. I imagine. I mean, you said you teach at like small colleges. You know the proletariat bourgeois difference, right? Like the thing that separates them.
Let me see if I could put it more as a bourgeois. Isn't that like what we would call now like a middle class?
No, bourgeoisie is somebody that can live purely off of owning something.
Bourgeoisie is someone who can live purely off of owning. Oh, so you're talking about passive income.
Yeah, like
Okay.
like the shareholder class,
Okay. Okay.
the
Yeah,
other stuff like that.
dividends and
Yeah, people
okay,
that
gotcha.
don't
I'm following.
actually produce anything. They just own
And
things.
proletariat's like the
People who have to sell their labor
Russian
to live.
literature.
People who have like cannot do that. People who have to sell their labor somewhere. I acknowledge in the modern context
Well,
it's a lot
there's some
more
choice.
messy because there are people
Yeah,
that like own their own bar or something like that, but they work at the bar they own at and stuff like that. I understand that the distinction isn't as clean as it was when Marx wrote it in like the 1860s.
he
Uh,
was a nut job though, man. I mean, he was an absolute like
I mean,
psycho. Like,
the
just like
aside from what you think about him, I want to just keep it on the idea of I think that a like libertarian socialist model where it is a market, except there are no just owners. It's all workers who have to cooperatively own the business that they work at, and then things are voted on that way. So if
I'm actually not
votership
familiar with that. Um, that so you're saying that goes on a large scale somewhere?
I think the best example that has tried that would have been Catalan, Spain. And they were crushed by Franco. So obviously, there's things to work out in terms of like how do you cooperatively run a military. I don't think you can. I think there needs to be a
Okay,
chain of
well,
command.
in theory, it's the discrimination argument. In theory, if what you're saying would work better,
Uh huh.
then companies would do that. They would migrate to employee ownership plans and employee management, and then they would outperform their competitors. Like that's the market would allow for that to occur, wouldn't it?
Yeah. The problem with that it would be that the bourgeoisie obviously do not want to let go of their power and will do things to stop. Like they're being hard even just on unions, and unions are nowhere near like the power of like just being purely a cooperative. I don't know if you
Well,
followed
I I
the
argued in favor of the UAW strikes and contract negotiations. I argued on
yeah.
not that Twitter's great, but that's my only platform, right? And yet you saw what happened when they got it. They got a great deal. I think it was well deserved.
Mhm.
And I think the company saw that, and then immediately they lost jobs. So I'm not sure.
I can understand the like argument that co-ops and unions need to be more business savvy. I don't think that that's a wrong thing to think. I'm actually currently working on a thing where I want to try and find examples of unions that maybe like asked for more than what the business was even capable of getting and maybe take it. I personally don't know an example of that, but I would like to find one in order to critique it because
Well, you'd
obviously.
think I had to join a union. I guess I didn't have to. I joined a union when I started teaching, right?
Mhm,
And it was in Illinois at the time.
mhm.
And then they had the Supreme Court ruling that was based on an Illinois man suing for taking out um, union dues.
Right.
And so it allowed us the option to opt out. So I opt out,
Wait, what?
and then you would think that
The
not
entire
undergrad, but you
point.
would think that
Sorry, I'm just very much disagreeing with that. The how? Why would you get to benefit from a union that you don't pay dues into?
what's I let me try to let me try to say this real quick. Two tracks. The one you're saying is how dare a person get benefits from a union without paying for it? That's fair. And the other one is unions as sort of a mechanism for employees to control a business, to add their managerial input. Let's put it that way.
Mhm,
So two different tracks. Um, I was the reason I bring this up is I was groping for. I know a lot of union workers, especially in auto manufacturing, right?
mhm.
They do their job and they know a lot, but they would never want management. It's the whole UPS thing. There's a real divide between management and the labor on the ground, what you're talking about, the muscle kind of thing.
Right.
Um, but teachers, you would expect the unions to have tremendous influence. And during COVID, you saw, one of the national teachers unions had a strong voice, but you've really not seen teachers as educated as they are, as expert as they are. I know they have hierarchies, but it's basically a flat organization functionally. They're the ones that do the teaching.
Do you think?
So the unions should have a lot of management say over education,
Well,
and they don't seem to. I think you're right.
mostly administration, but I think a lot of that could be. I think a lot of the wind has been taken out of the sails of the teacher unions by private charters.
Did
Um,
you see what DeSantis did to them? He basically said the same thing the Illinois court did. You don't get the money automatically. Like people have to physically opt in. Like I had to opt out,
mhm.
and now Florida, and it decimated the Florida union. So basically,
Do you
it
think that's a
seems
good
like
thing?
as I would say it's a bad thing if it looked like the teachers union had that professional managerial input into the process, but the outcomes don't seem to show that. And what happened in the Illinois Supreme Court, the case that went to the Supreme Court, and the
Mhm.
Florida case most recently, it seems like the unions are just about money. And if they're not about the managerial expert, then they fall into that bourgeoisie category that you're talking about. They're basically sitting on their asses, collecting money, and not actually doing anything to add value
I've
to the
heard
process.
like there's it's more of a more modern something managerial class. Um, I could understand that possibly happening, but I am not really educated enough on the
Me
Florida
either.
teacher
No.
union to like even like meaningfully combat what you're saying because like I don't know. Um,
Well, I certainly didn't mean it as an argument. I
oh
find
no,
what you said.
I'm
I
I'm
was
the
just trying to
contentious
learn
one.
and
Don't worry.
or no,
But
I don't see how that could work, but because Trump is kind of the example of what you're saying you want. You kind of want the outsiders to rise up. It's this idea of populism. If the people could only be in
no,
charge,
no,
well,
I
Trump did a crappy job with that
no,
union.
I feel like if
The
I let
people.
I feel like if I let Trump and the people that control him, um, if we let them have, if we put it this way, if they didn't have the blocks they did, if the institution was weaker, if the Democratic Party was weaker, I think the Democratic Party is weak, but if it was even weaker
Me
than it
too.
is currently, I think I don't. I could easily see Trump like be not even just Trump, like some like one of the psychopaths like what's his name, Miller, the dude. He looks like if Lex Luthor had AIDS. Um,
Yeah,
like
it's
those
bad.
ghouls and stuff like that had their say. I feel like there would be like mass death. I think I would easily see like Bill Barr has even talked about like trying to invoke sedition on people that were just protesting during Black Lives Matter, not the rioters or what. I don't even think you should do sedition on rioters. But in terms of like just like rioting at like a random target, I don't think that's sedition. If you're rioting at like a government building, I could see the argument at least, but that's not what Bill Barr was trying to do. I feel like if they had their way, there would be lots. It would be bad for the socialist project. Okay,
Did you read Bill Barr's book on the Trump administration?
I have not read that book. No, I know that he
I
does
don't
not
know.
like Trump anymore.
Well, I it's hard to say because these guys are experts. They're political, they're bureaucratic. So maybe I'm sucked in, but I don't think he has a personal opinion one way or the other. I mean, clearly he doesn't like the guy, but I think it's more dispassionate.
Oh yeah, he
I
wants
think he
power.
sort of echoes.
He wants power by any means. I don't think that Bill Barr has a real principle in his body. I think
Oh,
he
really?
no.
I thought you were describing Trump. You think Bill Barr doesn't have a
I
principle?
think a lot of the GOP. I think there are like two types of people, like fanatical, like Christian national. Oh, okay, three types of people. Like old, like neoconservative, like deficit hawks or whatever. I think they're the minority. I think you have like frothing at the mouth, like Christian nationalist fascists. And then you have like Patrick Bateman type um people that like just want power and are willing to go along any way to get it, no matter who they step on, no matter who's in the way. It's all a vehicle to their own power, and that is their overriding principle and nothing else. And I think Bill Barr's in the third one there.
Isn't the democratic process in general that we're discussing, which includes the things people you just said, isn't that sort of an actual exercise of the more Nordic socialism you're describing, where sort of the people run things? Isn't politics like essentially that?
And
Because
politics,
we vote,
are
or do you?
no, I'm just saying that like if you want, I think like I think the voters like care about some issue even if it doesn't make sense. But I'm talking about when I talk about Bill Barr, I'm talking about like a careerist, like there's a throne, I want to sit in it. I have found the best path to sit in it. I don't like none of the things I'm using to sit in that throne I actually care about. Like put it this way, if Bill Barr thought he could become a Supreme Court justice by becoming like a I don't know, like a Bernie Sanders type, he would do it tomorrow.
So you think that Bill lacks principles, and as a Marxist, you see it more as a power struggle, that he wants power, or people like him would do things for power.
Yeah,
It's not principle.
right. The
What
power
do you
is
think
the
of
principle.
DeSantis then?
I also think that about
Eh,
DeSantis.
You think that same thing about DeSantis? No, would that is that generally define, as a Marxist, does that define like your whole worldview? Because that's a very Marxist way of looking at the world.
I'm it's a perspective that I think explains a lot. I'm not gonna I would never put myself to just only one perspective.
So why? One thing that's bothered me and part of my disillusionment is that many of the people, no matter how you Republicans, no matter how you categorize them, they have come out and endorsed Trump, and I'm, of course, have
Oh,
become
yeah.
adamantly opposed to. I defended him tooth and nail in context where that was not an easy thing to do professionally
Mhm.
and personally, and now I'm not. Now my judgment is this, I'm just one small drop in the ocean, but it's my judgment is he's bad. So if people if people in the party have supported Trump
Mhm,
and DeSantis and Bill Barr, whom I like both, do not support Trump,
mhm.
if they wanted power, wouldn't they, kiss the ring? Wouldn't they be sucking up to Trump? Wouldn't they be doing what Jim Jordan
Yeah.
and
I
all the
I
other
understand what you're
so-called
saying.
conservatives do?
I think they're betting on the cheeseburgers catching up to him or the legal indictments.
I know. I know. Don't you wish you could hear the inner calculus?
Yeah.
Like, when is he going to fill in the blank, right? It's
Yeah.
like,
No,
and then
I think Bill
it's kind of
Barr,
a joke.
it's I think you notice that it comes down to district too, right? Like the people that are notice that the only people that uh I think Liz Cheney is the only person that really lost anything by coming out against Trump. Her and Kissinger or whatever.
Yeah,
And
I was in
I
Kissinger's
think they
district.
have principles. They have a hill they were willing to die on. And I don't think
I'm
that's true for a lot of Republicans, and to be true, some
okay.
Democrats.
Let's go back to the bully strategy of Trump.
Yeah.
He basically, regardless of what you and I think of him, he basically took out Liz Cheney.
Mhm.
I personally didn't like her, but now that I reflect afterwards, I think maybe it was I didn't like her because Trump said not to like her, right?
Oh.
Because now that I look at her record, there's very few things I find that are actually
I
disagreeable,
mean, yeah,
and there's a
sure.
lot of people like Stefanik and stuff that support Trump that are liberal. They're liberal Republicans, which is fine. That's is district by district.
Mhm.
But do you think that his ability to just take out one person was sort of a threat to all the other Republicans?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember 2015 when he was running. Fox News fucking hated Trump until they couldn't.
Did they? I'd
Yes,
forgotten
they
that.
uh, Ted Cruz
I don't
won
I don't have I don't have cable or TV,
Oh,
but
Ted Cruz won. They Ted Cruz was the favorite. Ted Cruz won Iowa, in
oh, couldn't
2016.
stand Ted Cruz. He was
Yeah,
such a smarmy.
honestly, I think Ted Cruz has been taken out more by calling him the Zodiac Killer than anything. Uh,
I didn't remember that. I have non-religious,
mhm.
connections that love Ted Cruz, and I thought because I'm a very religious person, I was like, you guys can't see it, but this is just fake. This is just fake religious leader.
Oh yeah, I think
The
that's
member
mostly.
of his.
I think that's most religious people. I don't think most.
Do you really?
I think most
What about
religion.
the what about the Iowa guy, Vanderplat? Did you
Vanderplat.
I found him very moderate and very honest.
Gonna be honest, he never came across my radar. Um,
No way.
Yeah. Nope. I literally the only people I cared about or looked anything into in terms of this past Iowa was Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, Trump, obviously, and Chris Christie.
Do you
Everybody
think
else, I
Trump
was
has
like,
a
I don't.
you
I'm not even gonna like put time into looking at these people that are obviously going to lose.
okay. Well, obviously didn't matter. Do you think Trump's strategy of attacking any Republican like Governor Kim Reynolds,
Hmm.
I mean, is it effective?
Um,
Mhm.
Effective in terms of him being able to like keep his own power and basically like keep the entire
Yeah,
party on a leash. Yeah. In
yeah.
terms of long-term conservative goals, no.
I would agree 100% with what you said. And one of my frustrations with DeSantis was obviously that he didn't do
Uh,
the same
I'm
thing,
gonna be
that he
honest.
didn't attack Trump.
If I had to choose between DeSantis and Trump in terms of like who I would be more scared of having power, I would be more scared of DeSantis because he is more efficacious.
Of course, and I think how many videos did we play and commercials ran saying that liberals are basically afraid of DeSantis because he actually believes what he says and he can
Yeah.
find a way to get
Well,
something
also,
done.
I think DeSantis would lose though because I think he has the charisma of like a boiled egg. Um,
But he you have to admit he grew as a as a
A little
candidate, and
bit,
I
yeah,
know
he could
that
grow
was
into it,
hard to
but
not.
honestly, if I was like the DNC thing, like, look, I have a pretty good gaydar. DeSantis has sucked a dick before, okay? I can
I don't
tell,
think
I can see it in his face. That man is gay. I don't know if you've ever talked have you ever heard like hearing him
I don't
talk.
know.
I look,
That could have that could have just
I have a gay girlfriend. I hang around gay people all the time. My
that
gaydar
but
goes off so hard on DeSantis.
let me ask you this question though. Have you been around many Navy people?
Yes, actually.
Okay, so if you do a, correlation analysis, right, like a regression analysis where you
Mhm.
parse out the different elements, how much of that is just being Navy?
Well, to be honest,
It's like
being Navy is pretty gay.
it really is. It was so hard. I'm Air Force, and it was so hard for me not to say any jokes about the Navy.
But,
So,
hey, I wanna
he did
ask
grow though. He got better.
about DeSantis. I One of the main things that makes me think he's a closet bisexual is the fact that he thinks that straight kids can be talked into being gay.
Why do you think Okay, I got 2 questions. 1, why does it matter? I mean, what's the issue of
I
sexuality? Why is that important? And why do you say that he thinks people can be talked in and out of
Well,
things?
why it's an issue of freedom. Like, if somebody isn't inherently hurting anybody by what they're doing, I don't think we should do things against it, you know? If you wanna think it's cringe or whatever, fine, but if they're not
No, I
inherently
mean,
hurting.
why do you think talking about a person's sexuality,
Oh,
a candidate's sexuality is
in
relevant?
in terms of being a Republican, because, like, you're just it goes into, like, the idea that this is like a Patrick Bateman vehicle to power kind of thing. Like, if you're a gay Republican, obviously you don't believe in anything, right? Like, or unless you really, really love the budget, okay? Like, that's the one way. Like, you're over. Like, I will make sure all of the trans people are in camps as long as we can get a good budget. Like, maybe that exists, but otherwise,
I don't think the government affects our personal lives that much, man.
dude, they literally are trying to in Florida, they're trying to charge trans people with fraud for having gender markers that they changed before the law.
Florida is trying to charge people a
With
penalty for fraud for changing their gender identity.
for Retroactively. So it's not even like if somebody say like they put in the law where it's like you can no longer change your gender article from the gender you were assigned at birth or whatever. It also now retroactively, if you have that currently right now, like before the law was even put in. Obviously, I don't think it's going to stand up in the Supreme Court or any. Oh, I think it'll get to a. I don't even think it'll get to the federal court, the federal Supreme Court. I think it's going to get to like a lower level federal court and get thrown out because it's obviously unconstitutional. But the point is that they're
Well,
trying it.
obviously, I'm not aware enough to
Yeah.
comment. I don't think it's likely. I think that sounds a little,
Oh,
fundraising-ish.
yeah, it's very much a cynical vehicle to, weaponize angry boomers, but I think that, like, I think this about anyway. I think if you think that a straight teenager can be made gay by just simply knowing about gay people or whatever, I think you're a closeted bisexual, because I think it means that you have worked through gay thoughts and then, like, kept yourself straight, with big air quotes. Does that make
Well, I
sense?
think there are cultural shifts, man. You can't say that
There are.
cultural acceptance and
But
attitudes
the
don't
cultural
affect
shift is the
what kids do.
openness. The cultural shift is the openness. I think there's been the same amount percentage-wise of gay people. The only thing
That's
that
a
is
real
that the only thing
that's a
that is
real
hold on, the only thing that has
that's
changed is the closeted part.
that's a real passive view. Like somehow the culture is negative if it's against it. It has an impact if it's against something, but it's simply open if it's for actively for something. It's
Okay,
advertising.
hold on.
It's
I
the
just
culture is advertising.
so
Culture influences. It just influences. It changes people's minds. It makes what we say in economics. It makes marginal choices different.
do you think that there are people today that are gay that wouldn't have been 50 years ago?
I think the frame has shifted completely. I mean, obviously I don't talk about sexuality with the college kids, right? So what's that 18, 20 uh, or young airmen? But I do see it.
Mhm.
Um, People experimenting, actively experimenting, trying, feeling an obligation to exhibit openness. So demonstrate. If you're not with us, you're against us, kind of thing. So
I
you
mean,
kind of have
a
to.
lot of us
Kids are very susceptible to peer pressure, man.
okay.
Very susceptible to peer pressure.
Sure, but I don't think in regards to sexuality that's true because I don't. Are you
Oh, only
aware?
sexuality. Everything else that we
Hold
use
on,
sex to sell everything, but
quick question.
sex cannot influence peer
Do
pressure.
you kn do you
Okay,
know
I'm gonna agree to disagree on that one
hold
because
on.
I think
Do you know
I
about
think
the
sex is
data
one of the more powerful.
quick question. Do you know anything about, conversion therapy?
I mean, I know, what, like a layperson hears in the news about it. It's where you try to convince someone, m- in this case, mainly on sexuality, to not
Right.
do
And
that. Yeah,
the it was made illegal in several states because they were literally doing torture on gay teenagers.
sure.
They
Yeah,
they were waterboarding them, they were hooking up, like, electric stuff to their genitals and, like, showing them porn to try and get them to be
sure.
straight, whatever,
Yeah,
and, obviously, that's all wrong, but at the end of the day, after all this torture and stuff like that, it also
right,
didn't work.
right.
So if you
All that's
can't
true.
so if you can't waterboard a gay teenager into being straight, how can you talk a straight teenager into being gay?
Well, again, I think it's the window, the frame that shift. You're looking at us. You're looking at s- people don't send their kids to various training. What's the word in China? The communist camps, re-education camps,
Mhm.
for use of drugs or stealing or sexual behavior or violent behavior. They largely send kids to that either because they have a negative reaction or the kid is far off on the curve. Right? They're very strongly. So I don't know. I think in general the range is wide, and you believe that people are generally the same percentage, say, and the same degree of sexual diversity
I think and
throughout
then
history, and it's just whether
the
people
whether
can
or not
be
so
open to it and admit it or not. Yeah,
yeah,
I get that position. I just don't buy it. Yeah,
I don't
like
because, like, if you look in,
like
like,
the
the ancient
Kinsey.
past, like, there are times where it was gayer than it is now. Um
Well, see, I travel the world a lot, and you probably do too, though. But a lot of Americans, our definition of what it means to be slang gay,
Mhm.
like you see guys holding hands and wrapping around each other all the time. American closeness, we don't get as close as Europeans do. That would freak the hell out. It would just we kind of see things from a more Puritan perspective, and
Mhm.
anything that's close we call gay.
Yeah, I
So
know.
we just find a lot of the
My
friendship.
grandpa
But
was
the
stationed in Turkey. He would always talk about how guys were, like, holding hands and stuff.
Yeah,
Um
that's a perfect example. And the original Kinsey study that pegged it at 10%, is obviously done in prison.
Mhm.
So I think that reinforces my view. Those men in prison were not inherently gay. The situation, the culture, the peer
So
pressure,
so you think there's, like, a
fill
gu
in the blank.
you think
It
there was a straight man getting reamed in the ass then?
Yeah, I think the situation you find yourself in, the culture you find yourself in, the time you find yourself in affects your behavior. And I
I
think
I think I think if you, like, like, there definitely have been people, like, that, like, grew up in, like, certain times that, like, are only straight out of fear, right?
of
Like,
course, absolutely, 100%. Yep.
and they would have otherwise been kinda gay if they felt safe, and, like, this is you notice this with,
Yep.
like, studies recording women, you know, how people talk about the promiscuity of men versus women. Obviously, like, men are a little bit more because we have, like, testosterone and stuff, but the number one thing that inhibits women's sexuality isn't, like, whether or not they're horny or not, it's whether or not they feel safe, and when
Well,
women
I don't think that data is accurate, at least accurate anymore. I think,
uh,
but
trust me, buddy, they women women are just as horny, like, maybe, like, 5-10% less horny than men, as long as they feel safe and there's not gonna be no social repercussion. A large part of
no,
the
I think
horniness of
no,
men
I was
is
saying
that we don't have social repercussions for our promiscuity.
no. I think your data is old. I think women are more promiscuous than men now.
Um,
I think all the stats I've seen shows that a very small subset of men are actually having any sex at all, let alone a lot of sex
wait,
with different partners.
in terms of,
But
like, wanting to
the
I think there's a marked difference between, like, when I say horniness, I mean, like, put it this way, if a dude could have, like, a different pussy every night, like, when they're 22 or whatever, they would, and they're
Mhm.
only held back by the fact that they can't. Versus
Yes.
a woman, I don't think a woman would want a different dick every night. I think sometimes they would want to, like, read and, like, have a bathtub, surrounded by candles, and, like, probably would rather use a dick that can vibrate that she bought from Target. Um, I think we have to, I don't obviously, more
No,
women are
I
having
wouldn't disagree with
sex
you.
than men
I'm just
are, but that's
saying,
because they have more opportunities to, not because they want
yeah, but
to more than the other. I think that that's an important
of
distinction.
course I agree with you. What you say makes sense, but I'm
Yeah.
saying the result of what you just said is that more women are having sex with more people and less men are having less sex with less
Well,
people
in
right
terms
now,
of
like
the
the
modern
actual
generation,
snapshot
both
of
genders are
statistics,
having
yeah.
less sex than millennials. Millennials had less sex than Gen X, and I think Gen X and boomers were around the same.
So what we've seen in this conversation is that there that life is complex.
Yeah,
Like there's other factors besides our internal drive and desire.
right.
And one of those things is shame and social blockage, the ability to do it. But all these things work together in general. What I thought when we were making the big shift, Obama used to be against same sex unions.
Yeah,
Then the DOD, he had them come out. And once that happened, the Supreme Court decision was inevitable. That was
yeah.
basically military decision to make same sex unions legal.
Mhm.
Um, the indicator that I was looking at was you can't look at cohabitation rates, right? Because all the sex studies we've seen show that same sex couples that stop having sex are called roommates and they automatically fall out of the data pool.
Mm.
Heterosexual couples that are living together that stop having sex are still considered couples, but they're not having sex. So they're it's skewed. So looking at marriage rates is what I thought should be the indicator. And what we've seen from the marriage rates is exactly the same homoerotic, homosexual tendencies.
Mhm.
Now, you could probably use my own argument against me and say, well, David, Barnes, the people are not predisposed, like men aren't predisposed to marriage and things like that. But we have extremely low marriage rates among same sex, except in the military. I have, my neighbors at my new house, same
Mhm.
sex, two ladies with a kid, right? So, yeah, I
Yeah.
think the culture and the setting has an impact as well as the internal desire that you're talking about.
Do you think that how do you feel about DeSantis trying to, like, stop, your neighbors from, like, raising a kid as, like, a lesbian parents?
See, I didn't wanna be rude. I was trying to be subtle. I just don't know enough about it to say that I just don't buy it. It doesn't sound legit. It sounds like a talking point. You're probably right. It's probably a thing, but it sounds like the way you said it was
Well, like,
it
just legal
you
I just wanna talk about your values here. Like, obviously, you think it's fine, right?
I don't think what you said should happen is happening is fine, but I don't think what you said is happening is happening. I just don't know enough about
No,
it.
I mean,
No
I'm
one no
just
one's
in ter
doing that. No one's trying to prevent people from raising children. No one's
there
trying to
very
prevent
much
people
are.
from being
There
together.
there are literally a couple people sitting on the Supreme Court that would make that illegal.
I mean, that's the way people in our country that are more on the left, see things. I get that they see it that way. I just don't think it's
I mean,
accurate.
like, no, like,
I think it's
you think Clarence Thomas, like, explicitly said, like, going after Ogerfell was a way of, doing other things, and he conspicuously stopped at interracial marriage because that would be the thing that affects him.
I think I've seen some polling that you would think that Americans be overwhelmingly in favor of same-sex unions,
Uh-huh,
and you still see a sizable portion that just says no, that's not right. Um,
right. Why do you think they think that's not right?
it's hard to say now, man. If you'd asked me that in 2008, even Barack Obama would give the same answer, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because
I think,
it's
yeah, Obama definitely was, like, lying. I think personally he felt like it was fine, but he knew the political realities of the country he lived in.
So it's interesting. Most people would make the argument you tried to make against DeSantis is personal
Yeah,
characterization. They would make that characterization against President Obama
right. I think,
for more obvious reasons, right? I
right.
mean, just for completely obvious reasons.
I think that there is, and you'll notice that I said earlier where I was like talking about like a gay Republican not being one of those things. Like maybe they just prioritize something so much more that they're willing to sacrifice other things. Like I gave the example of like a gay Republican budget hawk who like didn't care, who cared so much about the budget that he was willing to like sacrifice gay marriage for it. I think that that could explain Obama more, except it was about like healthcare.
So, do you think that Trump's obvious openness, like Rick Grinnell, who's I don't agree with his most recent political attacks, but
Hmm.
as a person, as a leader, phenomenal. You can list several people that have been in Trump's camp or circle at
Hmm.
one point. Do you think that makes Trump a stronger candidate for people that have more progressive view of sexuality? Is he seen by the left as a pro-gay president?
No, he's not.
See, exactly. So
Well, because of his like of the people he's appointed and stuff like that. Like he appointed Amy Coney Barrett, who is part of what's the fucking organization? It's a Dominionist Christian organization that wants to like basically empower charter schools to be able like the charter schools that like she wants to like take over education, like have it in their thing that like they will kick out gay students and that they're legally allowed to do that.
charter schools have been amazingly successful.
I've talked to, like,
I don't
teachers
know
and stuff
how
like
they've
that.
survived, but they seem to be thriving.
If you'd like, I could set up a conversation with with a real former teacher about his experience working for charter schools and how bad they were.
I'm not surprised they're bad. I can't imagine that they can function because, first of all, they don't have the capital. I would think a school's biggest expense is the
Oh,
capital expense of actually building a school, and they get none of that money at all.
I think
Um,
the worst part about charter schools is just treating schools as a business and, kids as a product. Like,
what do you
what
think?
is standardized tests other than, like, quality assurance? Like, it's a,
Oh, that's all it is. 100% what it is.
th
What do you think about the idea of just saying foregoing formal education altogether and just saying, hey, we can video on a computer-based training model, CBT, or
I
a YouTube video,
I think
every
it
subject
depend
possible?
I think it depends on what the certification is. I think it makes sense for some things and other things not. I think we have a dire need for more in-person things, especially for the humanities, because
Well, I quit teaching in person um,
you know.
when COVID hit, and I essentially went on long-term orders with the military, and that's why I've been in Europe for the last 2 or 3 years now,
Mm,
or 2 years and going on three. And then I did some stuff in the States before because I miss teaching in person. And the reason I'm teaching right now online, with the commander's approval, is because I had interviewed for a job at a school,
mhm,
and honestly I didn't want to leave Europe, and I wanted to wait just a little bit longer, and they didn't want me to come halfway through the year.
yeah,
But then they called back and they said, I'm sorry you couldn't accept it. But could you teach online?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I could." And I've actually enjoyed it. I don't think it's the same, but because I
yeah.
really miss hearing what students think in the moment. Um,
There
but
yeah, for
it's
sure.
getting to be super normal. I mean, in the military, a lot of people get their degrees online, and I'm like, "Well, how are you
Oh,
having the
yeah.
same experience?"
I know somebody that was just basically a certification monkey that just all day, every day was just getting certs.
Well, everybody who says they have their PhD now, I'm not being rude to them at all. I'm like, "Oh, could I read it? Could I read your dissertation?" And I
Yeah.
read it, and this is like, no offense, but it's almost all of that I read is master's level stuff. It's not
Uh,
PhD stuff.
so you've seen
So I
like
don't know.
in the advent of like online stuff, you've seen like just personally a dip in the quality of like the type of the academic work done.
Well, it's economics, right? You flood the market with something, its value goes down.
Yeah.
So I remember I was working for an electric co-op. You were talking about co-ops earlier.
Yeah.
and it was one of my best experiences. And we had
Mhm,
a district that needed a new manager, and we had an old cranky guy with a white beard, right,
mhm,
who never finished college, and we had a young, smart um, guy who did college, and they were both fine. The young guy got the job because he had the degree because we made a new HR policy, but the older guy would have been the better pick, right? So we have
yeah.
made it mandatory to have a college degree for every fucking thing on the planet. And of course,
Wait,
that's going to reduce it
what
to just
what made the
basically
older guy better? Just his experience, or
well, when you're dealing with electricity and outages, you have a lot of customer interaction, government interaction, and then in a crisis, you have to really be able to manage your people and take care of them. And he just had the maturity, the experience. You know, he never got upset. He always knew what was going on. He could handle things effectively. He was a back to competence. He's very competent. The other guy was young, a little bit brash, arrogant, a little, the
yeah,
Dunning Kruger curve. You know,
yeah, I know about
he
this.
was
Yeah.
young. You know, he was like on the Republican side, people people critique JD Vance because he's a Trumper. Okay, yes, I
Mhm.
don't like Trump, but JD Vance has only been doing the job for a year. You know, they berated AOC, but as these people get, this is why I'm against DeSantis's term limit idea. As people
Mhm.
get experience, they get better at the job. And but that has nothing to do with the degree. And if you give people a mandatory, you have to get this degree, they're going to get the degree the easiest way possible because they're not valuing the education, the transformation of the mind that occurs. They're
Yeah.
not valuing the idea that we learn how to be critical thinkers and open to the world and analyze things that aren't our current understanding. Instead, it's about getting a piece of paper checked off. So it's it's not worthless, but almost everybody has a PhD now. It seems like it used to be a special thing. It's not anymore.
I mean, maybe you and I are on different side of the railroad tracks here, but I would say I don't know. Maybe in like I don't know. You sound like you're part of some military Europe thing, so maybe it's easier to get PhDs, and everybody's using
No,
their
I'm just
GI Bill and stuff like that.
that 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 could be. I don't know. I just work with a lot of people that have jobs that um require advanced degrees, and it seems like everybody, you know,
Actually, since you have like evaluated PhDs, can I send you something? Because like I have. Are you aware of Capella University? Capella University. This is totally
Capella.
aside, by the way. I think that's how it's said. Capella.
I think it's Capella, but yeah,
Capella. Um, what is your uh evaluation of Capella University in
I
terms
don't
of their
remember
PhD
what's the.
program? Because like from what I've read online, like a lot of people think it's like a diploma mill.
Yeah, that was my impression, but I don't follow it, but that's like vaguely hearing in the news.
Okay, because like
Um,
I'm working on something where I think somebody is faking bought their PhD. Put it that way.
yeah, and the program where I teach right now, they offer doctoral level stuff, but they just basically change it to, there's a difference between a doctorate of letters and a PhD. And so there's a lot of EDDs, DB, doctorate of business administration,
Uh
you
huh.
know, that's basically a souped up master's. And I'm okay with them getting that. It's my problem is when they put a PhD label on it.
Mm.
I mean, and they want to call themselves doctors, like President Biden's wife, Jill Biden, is an
Yeah.
EDD, right? It's not a real doctorate, and it doesn't travel. You shouldn't call her doctor, but as respect to First Lady, of course we will.
I don't
But a
know.
lot of people just
I refuse to call anyone a doctor that like if like I was on an airplane and I shouted, "Is there a doctor on
exactly.
board?" and like somebody
No,
stood up,
that's the actual rule. Yeah, that's the rule.
yeah,
That the word is it doesn't travel.
I have a
That the
doctorate in
doctorate doesn't
marketing.
travel. Yeah, yeah. The doctorate does not travel. You know, your original idea was sort of why am I disenfranchised? And as a Republican, I'm very comfortable with this more comfortable than you, with a wide range of people that are in the Republican camp, like Bill Barr, all these people. I may not agree with them, but they're
Wait,
in my zone, right? And in general, I'm uncomfortable with AOC, Nancy Pelosi. I'm a
yeah,
Republican.
yeah, yeah.
This is my tribe. Donald Trump, for some reason, must click something inherently, to use your sexual orientation
Mhm.
analogy. I must not be oriented to connect with whatever it is he represents.
Well,
It's almost like I'm allergic to it. I
I
don't think
think
he's a Republican.
I think, I don't know, a lot of people don't like labels anymore, but, like, if I was going to just,
Yeah,
like, base purely off this conversation, I would say that you're more in, like, the neoconservative camp. Like, I'm not saying that you would like
probably.
George Bush, but, like, it sounds
No, yeah,
when I
I do.
think of
Yeah,
yeah, when I think of, like, the type of Republican you are, I think it would be
yeah.
neocons. I think it's, I think the reason you don't connect with a lot of the Trumpists is because they're fascists.
You know, I don't think we know what fascist means anymore, but I
Uh,
cannot imagine that he is not a fascist. I cannot imagine that Trump doesn't represent what that would look like in a modern advanced economy.
uh
Because you could say fascist and you could say, oh, it has to be like Mussolini or something. But in our modern society, it would have to look a little bit different. And I think it would look like Donald
I
Trump.
was using are you familiar with the political theorist Roger Griffin? He,
No,
uh,
what's he?
coined a term for, like, the definition of true fascism as,
Okay.
palingenetic ultranationalism,
Do you,
where
when people talk about nationalism, because obviously you said I'm more of like a neocon,
yeah.
is nationalism in and of itself wrong?
No, I don't like it as a socialist. Sure, Marx didn't say workers of this specific country unite. So that's why I'm even left branded nationalism. I can understand it and like just kind of tolerate it, but do not. I am not a fan of like basically the idea that like the nationalist idea that like I was born here and thus I deserve more than someone who was born on another side of the line. Like that's
And
just
I do believe that. So put me on the scale because here it pisses me off when Republicans talk about the globalists, right?
yeah,
As if that's a bad thing. We live in a global world.
right.
Much of the benefits we get come from global activity. I don't know how you say. I don't know what that means. But on the other hand,
Like
I
if
just
you
lived in
drive
Hungary
a
for 2 years.
Toyota, you're a globalist.
You're a globalist, right? But I just lived in Hungary for 2 years. There's
Yeah.
no more nationalist member of the EU than Orban, right?
Hmm.
And he's pro-Trump. But I like Hungary. I think a country has the right to put its people first and to give itself primacy within its borders and to promote its self-interest in negotiation with other countries. So where does that leave me? I
Like
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 I don't see the mutual exclusivity of those two things.
where like I believe that somebody can be a nationalist and be in favor of global markets. Yeah, but I just don't think that talking about like the ultra. Well, it wasn't. Note that the term is ultra nationalism, not just nationalism.
Well, the reason I think we gave Trump a chance was because he said, and divorce is from the racist context, but America first, right?
Yeah,
We love America. We're going to engage the world, but we're going to put our priorities first. And we bought that. Obviously, he didn't do that.
I
Obviously, he doesn't believe that.
I think I understand that people believe that, but I think that like anyone who believed that we weren't doing America first beforehand is woefully retarded. Like
Say that one more time just so I can make
I
sure hear you.
I think that anyone who thinks that we were n- we s- anyone that who thinks that we were not doing America first for all of our foreign policy for like all of our stuff, anyone who thinks like and in
Oh, yeah.
terms
Yeah. Yeah,
uh,
you're right.
yeah,
Absolutely.
we've always been
Of
America
course.
first. I think we've been America first too much if we want to talk about Operation Condor, um, and the amount of meddling we've did in South America during the Cold War. We were being very America first when we deposed Allende in favor of that genocidal maniac Pinochet. Um, like the concept of that. Well, I think what most people thought of when they thought America first is American citizens first over the establishment, which I would agree, except I would call it worker over bourgeoisie.
But you've heard the conversation that even DeSantis people have largely had, right? It's like we don't want to send money. We don't want to send the military. We don't want to negotiate. It's basically, I'm not saying it's isolationism, but it's this idea that
It's
Americans seem to have that we are helping others and we get nothing in return. And I think that's what the populism,
Oh yeah,
how it caught
absolutely.
fire on
And
people.
I get in arguments with a lot of other leftists about like I think geopolitics is a much less ideological game than domestic politics is. Um, like I
It
don't
used to be the rule. Like,
yeah.
politics stops at the nation's borders. Used to be the
Yeah,
guiding principle of the
geopolitics creates incredibly strange bedfellows, and anybody who's, like, read on history knows that. You know, like,
in the military context. We do a lot of IR, international relations, and we basically use the theoretical framework of like the dime model or the midlife model,
mhm,
where you have the different kinds of power, diplomatic, information, military, economic. You
yeah.
can expand it to other things, but the
Like
author of that says that there's really only one. There's only power. He said these are power, meaning influence, is not a Marxist view of power, but they're all just different tools to influence outcomes for your
mhm,
own preferences, which is what you're saying.
yeah, I mean, Mao even himself said power comes at the end of a gun. But
But he
the
was wrong about that. He was wrong about that, and he
yeah,
and China. We had the great period where they began to move toward global cooperation, and now we have this recent jickweed that wants to pull them back into that more Maoist world where you use
yeah. No,
different types of force, but
I'm very not much a fan of, like, the USSR and Mao, as a leftist. Um, because I think they were state capitalist. I think they just renamed the bourgeois as the party and then pretended like they did something.
well, of
Um,
course you're right. But our response to that would be, of course, that's very convenient for you. But also, my view is that economics, especially capitalism, simply defines the way the world actually works. And
mhm.
anything that, like Marxism, socialism, that wants to glob onto it, they're basically trying to put lipstick on a pig. They're trying to manipulate. They're trying to be state capitalists. They're trying to do what the markets do, except they want to be in
Well,
charge. And
yeah.
control is an illusion.
Well, that's why I'm in favor of worker control. Where in terms of like, well, it's the market still exists, free market still exists, but the businesses are all cooperatively owned, where there's no more capitalists anymore.
But what if control really is an illusion? What if what you're
I
saying
mean,
cannot happen because it doesn't it the world doesn't work that way, right?
I
People don't
mean,
really like there's no such thing as a billionaire. There is no such thing as someone who has all this money in the top
it's
1%.
all speculative.
That money that they
Yeah.
so yeah, that money they have is sitting in other people's um bank accounts, or it's sitting in investments in places. It's like the It's a Wonderful Life scene where they have the run on the bank. He says, "The money's not here. The money's in Joe's house. The money's in Gladys's house."
Hmm.
There's no such thing as this capitalist accumulation of power just because
Wait.
Bill Gates has certain zeros past his name. If we've seen anything, a divorce from the two big guys, Bezos and Gates, completely wipes that out. It's an illusion that people have power, wealth, control. Those things are gifts from God, and God decides, you know, I'm going to use this guy as my tool. It's not about him. It's not about her. And then if that doesn't work out, God's got other plans for us, man.
Well, I mean, you're probably not gonna like my opinions on God, so we're just gonna go go past that. Um,
Well, thank you for calling. I'm sorry, I'm not.
no,
I've
you're
been
fine.
interviewed for
I
different
like to
stuff.
talk.
I'm not a good interviewer.
No, it's fine. I was curious about just like the idea because like I was just kind of curious about the idea of the DeSantis to Biden voter. I found that very interesting.
I
And
found that interesting, and when I posted recently about that, I got negative feedback. They said, "Oh, he's not really a Biden vote. He's not really. He never was a Republican, right? Because
mhm,
now he's woke and now he believes in progressive values." And I'm like, how the fuck do you think people change during a divorce? You
yeah,
go from loving this person and want to get to hating them, right? So
mhm,
of course, when someone gets spurned by the Republican Party or conservatism and they move away, there's a really good chance they're going to become,
mhm,
not gay, because like you said, that can't change, but they're going to become Democrats, right? They're going to
yeah,
become woke. They're going to see the value in the opposition. They're going to take a different look at life. And I think that's a natural. I think life is much more fluid in politics and sexuality and money
mhm,
and in religion than people like to think. We like to, like you said, we don't like labels. People like to put labels on things. We like to view the world as static because we like the idea, the illusion of control. but things are moving like a river constantly, and people are getting wet and dry and they're floating, and we don't end up the same place this year that we were last year. So I don't think it's inconceivable at all that you have a lot of Republicans like me who don't just sit out, but you'll have other Republicans who will actively campaign and donate and vote for Biden.
Hmm.
And I'd be honest, if RFK had shown more balls, that would have been an easy pick for me. Even friends tell me, "Oh, he's actually a socialist. Actually, he's immoral. Actually, he's I still would have voted for him." But he just let Biden roll him. I'm tired of incompetent, weak people who can't get things done, and
Okay.
that's one of the main things I liked about DeSantis.
All right. Well, if you want to arrange another conversation, we could have more of like an actual like instead. This is just kind of like an this is our first talk. I don't like to do a debate on the first talk unless somebody's like really reprehensible. But if you would ever want to arrange like an actual like clash, we could also do that. I'm trying to grow the channel and do more,
Yeah, sure.
trying to convert to doing like on the ground Gonzo journalism in the future.
Well, I respect you for that. I I had a bit of a battle. I don't usually get blocked by a lot of people. Like Jenna
Yeah.
Ellis blocked me.
Oh
I don't think
wow.
I'm rude to people.
You haven't
Andrew
been rude to
Wilson.
me. No.
I really despise this this fresh and fit Andrew Tate,
The fake.
whatever.
I could go
Yeah,
on days about that. That's the fake.
yeah. So I pulled a whatever clip that, and I didn't search for it. It popped up in my feed,
Mhm.
and then I posted and tagged him, and he engaged. To his credit, he engaged for 4 hours. But when I woke up the next morning, he had blocked me. I
Oh
guess
yeah,
he
he has me
thought better of
blocked
it.
too. I kind of deserved my block though because he was supposed to have some atheism debate with Matt Dillahunty. He was like a
Yeah.
guy, and he started by trying to like misgender and denigrate his partner because his partner was trans. And I wanted to debate Andrew that Matt's hotter trans model uh girlfriend, it was actually straighter to wanna fuck her than, Andrew's hog wife.
Well, I like Rachel personally. Rachel blocked me a long time ago, but I think more I hurt her feelings by not a.
Did you see that
I,
she pimped out her daughter to a fucking groiper, like one
oh,
Nick
isn't
Fuentes?
that horrible? I mean,
Yeah.
I just say they. I'm not saying people are good, right?
Mhm.
I'm religious, which means I believe people are rot gut bastards, and that's why God wants to
Yeah.
save us.
Yeah.
But that whole circle, that red pill world, corrupts people. Like it's what we said before. You're influenced by your culture, and I
Mhm.
think Rachel is fundamentally an intellectually curious person. That has some, but she has to fit in this mode. I got off track. I was going to say how much I respect you and
Mhm.
other podcasters because you guys are you know how to do this medium, and
Mhm.
I don't think many of us do. And I think it's much more complicated than civilians like us think. So yeah,
Yeah.
if you think I would ever fit into something that would work for you, I'd be able to be willing to have the same kind of honest discussion about
Uh,
whatever is important.
I would like to connect are you familiar with, Counterpoints, Connor?
No,
He is
sorry.
a I think he is a conservative that I also respect. I would like to like arrange like panels and stuff like that to where you guys can where I can just watch right wing infighting and try and pick up
I
stuff
love
from
it.
that.
That's brilliant, actually. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for this. Like I said, I'm not very good at these things. I've tried to
Look,
respond.
I'm gonna be honest, you've done really well here where
Okay, good.
you're doing a lot better than a lot of people in the medium currently are. I think you have actual cognizant answers for questions and aren't going you're going a little off vibes, but not purely off vibes, if put it that way.
I'm a I'm a weird like I've got just such a diversity. So I'm a pastor. I'm in the
Mhm.
military. I teach
Oh god, you're a
economics. I
chaplain?
mean,
Oh fuck, how many bodies have you stacked? No, I'm kidding.
just those three things. Yeah, every single NCIS episode is
Yeah.
the chaplain did it.
Yeah.
Don't even wait for the ending, right?
Yeah.
Um,
No, I was just
no,
talking about
fortunately, I
there's a meme that, like, every chaplain you talk to is like, "Yeah, I stacked, like, 20 bodies in the Gulf War." Like
well tonight
yeah.
we've had I don't know. This I was telling you I was so emotionally exhausted. I've been meeting anyway. So, yeah, sometimes the job is very rewarding though. I think people are fundamentally good.
Mhm.
Like I said earlier, I think we're all messed up, but
Yeah.
I love people. I think people are amazing, and I don't know. I think my favorite hobby. I love the new internet world because I can just sit there and watch like little video clips of people doing the coolest shit ever. Some of it really stupid, but
Yeah.
like, yeah, I keep thinking, how are you so freaking smart? Because you got people that are musicians and dancers, and they do stunts, and
Mhm.
they do science projects. And it's like people are awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna let you go. This has been an illuminating talk, and I'm sure we'll keep in contact.
Thanks, man. Good
All right.
luck to you.
Thank you. Later. All right. That was a cool conversation. You know. Oh shit, he's still talking. I think he's realizing. I don't know, but hey, that was cool. Is anyone actually in chat? Says I got 5 viewers right now. Ba, 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 ba. I think that was an illuminating talk. Um, I'm, v- he's definitely a minority. I don't think the polling shows that most of the DeSantis people went over to Trump, but the ones that didn't might be more like him. Uh, that is, um, that is interesting. All right, well, I think I'm gonna end the stream there because I don't really have much more going on, but that was a cool talk.